and welcome to my last video on schizophrenia, and this one is on the interactionist approach to schizophrenia, and this time we're on page 212 of the Pink-Haired Girl book. Excuse me. Okay, so the interactionist approach to schizophrenia is the idea that there is not one explanation of schizophrenia. It's a combination of biological, psychological and social factors which all contribute to the development of schizophrenia. So the biological causes would be a genetic vulnerability, a neurochemical and a neurological abnormality, and a psychological explanation would be stress from life events and daily hassles. And it would be a combination of having a genetic vulnerability and then the psychological stress which would cause schizophrenia to develop. The Diathesis-stress model, which you will have heard about if you've done forensic, and in the psychopathology module, says that to develop schizophrenia you need to have a biological vulnerability to it first and then a stress trigger to develop, to kick it off basically. Diathesis means vulnerability and stress means a negative psychological experience. So the Diathesis-stress model basically says that you need a vulnerability that is triggered by something. Meehl in 1962, he said that the diathesis, the vulnerability, was genetic and it was caused by what he called a schizogene, which led to the development of a schizotypic personality, which was characteristic of a person being really sensitive to stress. According to Meehl, that without this, no amount of stress and life hassles would lead to developing schizophrenia. However, in carriers of the gene, there are certain stress triggers, e.g. a schizophrenic mother can then trigger schizophrenia, but you need that genetic vulnerability first. However, we know from Ripke in 2014 that there is no single schizogene, and he found 108 genes could contribute to schizophrenia. However, Meehl's theory isn't entirely incorrect in suggesting that there needs to be some kind of vulnerability before it's triggered, as we'll talk about in the video. Modern views of diathesis suggest there's a range of factors and not just genetic which cause it. For example, Reed et al. In 2001 proposed a neurodevelopmental model where early trauma affects the developing brain. So early and severe childhood trauma, e.g. child abuse, can affect the brain development. And he found a link between the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, also known as HPA system, can become overactive, making them vulnerable to later stress in adulthood. The original Diathesis-stress model, stress was seen as a psychological characteristic in nature, particularly related to parenting, whereas modern day explanations of stress is anything that can risk triggering schizophrenia. For example, most people are aware that smoking marijuana can lead to episodes of schizophrenia. Smoking increases the risk of schizophrenia by 7 times because it interferes with the dopamine system. However, there has to be some kind of biological or genetic vulnerability, otherwise anybody who had smoked marijuana would have developed schizophrenia. It's unusual to treat schizophrenia using psychotherapies alone. Generally, we use CBT, family therapy, and token economies to help treat schizophrenia. To treat schizophrenia using the interactionist approach, generally we use biological and psychological therapies in conjunction. So this would be a combination of antipsychotic meds and cognitive behavioural therapy. Turkington in 2006 said that psychologists and psychiatrists cannot use CBT alone if they believe that schizophrenia is caused purely by biological factors. Because if they tell their patients there is no psychological cause and it's all biological, the patient isn't going to buy into the CBT as much, and CBT requires a strong patient input into that. You know, that they get homework, they're asked to do it out of the session, So if the psychiatrist or psychologist tells them actually your schizophrenia is caused by genes, well, there's not a whole lot you can do about that except, you know, take medication to control the symptoms. The interactionist approach is more common in Britain than the USA. We have been a lot quicker to adopt an interactionist approach, whereas in the USA they've been much slower at adopting this, and they've generally been either psychological cause or biological cause. They're not really haven't accepted for a long time that the two could link together. There is more of a conflict in the USA about this, and so Britain has been much quicker at using antipsychotics in conjunction with CBT and family therapies and things, whereas in the USA it generally tends to be either or. Okay, so thank you for watching my video on the interactionist approach explanations of schizophrenia. Any questions, just let me know or drop a comment below. Thank you. Bye.